The mystery of the little girl found strangled in the basement of her house.
Police continue their investigation into the murder of 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey.
It's a case so mystifying that nearly 3 decades later is still leaving people puzzled.
His body was found the day after Christmas in her family's Boulder home.
Hello.
The stunning unsolved murder of JonBenet Ramsey, the 6-year-old beauty pageant contestant from Boulder, Colorado.
The story of JonBenet is still just as interesting 28 years later because the same questions we asked then are still being asked today.
Given the pressure that the attention that's been given to it the last couple, 3 weeks, I think has driven home that we're serious. We want you to do everything that can be done.
JonBenet's father, John Ramsey, is still taking in the whirlwind of attention the smash hit Netflix series Cold Case, Who Killed JonBenet Ramsey, has brought to his daughter's story.
Takes a while, takes a long while for the pain to go away. But then the memory of JonBenet is joyful. And
That's where you're at now.
That's where I'm at now.
Sources tell ABC News progress is being made in the investigation and that a multidisciplinary team of experts has been assembled to go through the remaining evidence and apply the most modern scientific and cold case techniques.
Sources have told ABC News that progress is being made in the investigation. When you hear that, what do you think, John?
Doesn't tell me anything. I just need some specifics from the police. Are you doing this? Are you doing this? And if the answer is yes, then I'll shut up. I'll keep my mouth shut. I don't need to keep pressuring them. But if they don't tell me what they're doing, then I've got to assume the worst.
The Boulder Police Department, the wave of renewed public attention of the case, coming out just last week saying in a video that for years their department has been investigating JonBenet's murder, determined to find the killer.
I know the Boulder Police Department has not talked a lot about this investigation publicly, but that's, again, because no one wants to jeopardize any potential prosecution of a suspect.
Boulder's current police chief, who was not working at the department in 1996, addressing the mistakes made at the time.
So much of how law enforcement works has changed in the last 30 years. There are a number of things that people have pointed to throughout the years that could have been done better, and we acknowledge that is true. However, it is important to emphasize that while we cannot go back to that horrible day in 1996, our goal is to find JonBenet Ramsey's killer. Our commitment to that has never wavered.
Ramsey still has not watched the docuseries that his family's pain is the centerpiece of.
John, you think you'll ever watch?
It stirs up, frankly, some anger and emotion and a whole mix of things. And I know the story. I lived it.
Joe Berlinger is the director of the 3-part series.
Well, I've been very gratified that it's a hit on Netflix, you know. It immediately became the #1 show. We've rattled the cage there in Boulder.
Byron John Ramsey.
Just days before the documentary dropped in November, I first talked to Berlinger and Ramsey.
I remember covering this story as a younger journalist. There was no more important story in the country than the disappearance and the death of your daughter. With all that attention, all that scrutiny, why hasn't this crime been solved?
One simple reason: the police have refused help that was offered, and it could have helped. They had no experience, and they didn't have a homicide department.
Now, some people across the country are reevaluating the case on social media from all angles.
I'm so conflicted watching this. I don't really know what to think or believe.
It also really showed us how the media and the police twisted the facts and had us all believing that the parents were the killers.
While armchair sleuths search for clues on social media.
I find it strange with the DNA. They keep saying the DNA was so compromised at the scene. Well, why was it compromised? It seems like someone was maybe tampering with it.
Ramsey, now 80 years old, says the documentary has led to leads.
Well, I did get a letter yesterday from a lady that said, I think my husband is a killer, and please call me. And I will call her. You know, that isn't the first time we've gotten that kind of lead. We always follow up.
I've had quite a few people reach out with information and tips that we're sorting through as well.
And it's not an isolated phenomenon. Blue chip series, like the fictionalized retelling of the Menendez brothers in Monsters, bringing a frenzy of new attention and potentially leading to action in the courtroom.
We've seen cases explode both in the sense of popularity, but also in the terms of resources being put towards the solution of these cases. People are drawn to these stories to try to solve the very questions we've been asking for decades.
The response to Menendez, what do you think about your case as you see the success of that series and what's occurred in that case?
I'm encouraged more than I've been in a long time. You know, years ago I said, why doesn't God reveal the killer? You know, he's a God of justice, and that's my belief anyway. And somebody said, well, maybe you're not ready for that yet. And I thought, well, that may be right, because initially you put me in the room with this creature, we won't need a trial. The rage was so intense, and I would have had no remorse, but obviously that's not the right thing to do.
If I may ask, God willing, they find the person's responsible for your daughter's death. What would you want to say to them?
You know, certainly, why did you do this? I just want this chapter closed for the benefit of my family.
JonBenet's autopsy determined she had been sexually assaulted, strangled, and her skull was fractured. Unknown DNA was found under her fingernails and in her underwear. John and Patsy quickly became the suspects, despite the lack of evidence linking them to the crime.
He wasn't legally wrongfully convicted, but he was wrongfully convicted, and his wife, Patsy, the family, were wrongfully convicted in the court of public opinion.
It would take 12 years for the Boulder District Attorney's Office to completely clear the Ramseys and their son Burke. By that time, Patsy had died of ovarian cancer. All the while, JonBenet's killer has never been found.
JonBenet's blood was mixed with a foreign DNA. We need to separate out those two profiles, which can be done now.
John Ramsey says he is confident that advances in DNA technology can find his daughter's killer.
There's been a number of old cold cases solved using this genealogy research. Let's do a reverse family tree and see if he had a relative living in Boulder in 1996. That's what we're asking the police to do.
A lot of cold cases have been solved recently with genealogical DNA, like the Golden State Killer and the Green River Killer.
Since the Golden State Killer case, science has moved forward a lot, and we're able to work with smaller and smaller samples. We worked with mixed samples, highly degraded samples, but that still doesn't mean that every single case has viable biological evidence for us to work with. And we just really don't know what they have in JonBenet's case. And so I caution the public to hold their criticisms. I am very confident that if they have a DNA sample that is viable for genetic genealogy, they are doing everything they can to try to find her killer.
Sources tell ABC News it still remains to be seen whether there will ever be enough provable information and evidence to support charges. For John Ramsey, the questions about what happened that fateful day still loom large.
I have pictures on my cell phone, so anytime I pick up my cell phone, there's her little picture, and it's reassuring. It's like, okay, it's a way she's kind of with me. Somebody asked me once, what would you say to JonBenet if you could? She knew she was loved. I mean, we told her that every day. But I would tell her, I'm sorry, I didn't protect you. That's a father's job.